This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is October the 6th, 2025. Welcome to the podcast. And if you think that this is a podcast with facts and data, tell your friends and pass it on to someone else. Today, I want to talk about the U.S. federal government policy on the 2025 government shutdown. As promised to you, since the government did shut down, I want to talk about some issues that you're not getting from the mainstream. And these are significant. So, what are the actual issues? What I know, the blame game, speculation from the mainstream media. Now, I want to start with the speculation from the mainstream media is, if you've watched the news, and I know some of us hate watching the news now because it's the same old thing of the blame game, which was one of my bullet points. So I'll talk about these together. We are in an era of just sound bites, and the media shapes it for that 30 seconds that you are listening to it to form your opinion. Now, let's see what the issue is and get some facts and data. So, one of the issues that closed down the government was the enhanced subsidies being expanded, federal premium tax credits that make health insurance coverage more affordable under the Affordable Care Act marketplace. Initially introduced by the American Rescue Plan in 2021 and extended by the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. All right, so Congress is arguing over whether these enhancements should expire December 31st of 2025. Now, this is important to the two key issues of the enhanced subsidies. So, they provide more generous premium tax credits to individuals and families who are already eligible for the Affordable Care Act subsidies that are part of this marketplace. Number two, they expand eligibility for subsidies to middle income households with earnings over 400% of the federal poverty level. So, I want to start with that second one. Now, you're going to notice, and I notice when I research things, is they throw in words. So it's almost like a word war mingled with, boy, you better look up what this sentence is saying to figure out who they're talking about. Now, I'll give you this example. Expand eligibility subsidies for middle income household. Okay, so most of us think of middle income households because the soundbite always says, well, it's going to affect middle income. So maybe it's between 60 or 70,000 would be the starting point for who we think is middle income. The reason that I'm not giving you a number is, you probably don't know this, every year it changes depending on the narrative. Now, earnings over 400% of the federal poverty level. Now, I learned something. I had to actually look this up. Earnings above 400% of the federal poverty level means your household income is at or above the following annual amounts in 2025. And like I told you, they change every year. So, that would be 400% over the federal poverty level would be, for a family of one, you'd have to make 62,600 if it's just one person reporting income. 84,600 for a family of two, 106,600 for a family of three, and 128,600 for a family of four. Now, I told you, these levels change every year. There's a complexity in this as well. So a family of one. So is that people who are working? Yes. In this case, I looked it up. So if both people aren't working, then the family would be of one. See, this is how they get over talking about the middle class, and then it turns into a talking point. Now, the other issue is if you look at the language of the law, it talks about lawfully present non-citizens. It talks about a U.S. national. So I'm going to tell you what these are. What is a foreign national? No, a lawfully present non-citizen is a foreign national who has obtained legal permission to live and or work in the U.S. under various immigration statuses and is recognized as having lawfully presence for specific benefits such as the Affordable Care Act coverage. You probably didn't know that. I just learned that. All right. What is a U.S. national? Is either a U.S. citizen or person who owns permanent allegiance to the United States but lacks full citizenship. Now, it goes on, the AI say, well, they're really talking about the American Samoa and Swains Island. Okay, well, the law just says a U.S. national. And I just explained what these were. So I'm building the case here that the details are something that need to be explained more to people in this country if you're trying to persuade people to agree with what you're saying. So that gives you an indication to why the two sides are fighting. And also, they throw around middle class, meaning the Democrats, because it's all fair in facts and details here, of it affecting the middle class. And I have always said, define who you think the middle class is, because that's what gets people's attention, because currently the perception in the United States is that most of the voters and most of the people in the United States are in the middle class. So that gives you the flavor. And also, if the mainstream media would have dug into these details, you would have had a clearer understanding to who they were actually talking about. And you have to decide as a voter if you think that extending these enhanced subsidies, who is it really helping? Is it helping the American middle class, or is it helping people who just came into the country to get health care from tax dollars? So you have to decide that. And that is the straight story. Now, next, I'm going to talk about what I know about it. So during shutdowns, as you've heard, the federal workforce is affected. But what you don't know is that the U.S. government currently, people on the payroll get paid out of different pots of money. So in this area, you might be working next to someone who has to work, and I was wrong in thinking that if you were at work that you got paid. Well, I always worked for organizations that got money out of different pots of money. And I talked to a couple of people. So if you're in something called O&M funds that Congress has to appropriate every year, well, yes, you could be at work and not getting a paycheck. That is correct. I worked in organizations that were paid not from that fund. There were other ones, so I always got paid. So that clears that part up. But the soundbite for the mainstream media doesn't say that. They give you the impression that everyone is paid, federal workers are paid out of one fund, and that they cannot pay their bills. And on a personal note, that to me is something that bothers me because, yes, I'm looking for the word offended. I'm offended that they don't think that we can take care of ourselves because, listen, in the private sector, this kind of thing happens all of the time. Now, the next thing are these polls. I do not like the polls because still it's a soundbite of whoever is putting the poll out there trying to sway you to their point of view. And the people that win are the ones who do the polling to convince their group that they are correct to put pressure on the other side. And both sides are guilty of this. We, the people, we, the voters, don't have a clear understanding to why they cannot agree. And I'm talking about Congress. And most Americans expect the people that they send to Washington, D.C. to represent them and vote in the best interest. Don't vote with the party. Vote for the interests of your constituents. In the Senate, it's the same way. So we, the people, tune it out. That's why they do these sound bites. And based on what I've told you previously, my explanation, and all I did was look at the Affordable Care Act and enhanced subsidies. The way that this language is written, it looks like to me that they are targeting people who just got in the country, and the writing is such that they use the word middle class and they use the language of U.S. nationals, lawfully present non-citizens to include people that probably should not be getting these entitlements. You have to decide which side that you're on. And of course, listen to my podcast to get the facts and the data. Now, next week, if the government is still closed, I'll do some more, and I'm going to do some more digging because the reason I'm doing the podcast is to give you facts and data. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Let me know what you think.